This is a Culture Inject production.
This week on The Nevers, we're spotlighting the actors and creatives behind the camera, as well as discussing possible themes, topics, and storylines that the show might handle. I'm Tig.
Hi, and I'm Heather, and this is the Nevers Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to the discussion and dissection of every episode of the upcoming HBO series, The Nevers, an original sci-fi drama by master storyteller Joss Whedon.
If you'd like to follow us online, please visit our website at hbothenevers.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at HBO The Nevers. If you wish to stream the podcast, you can find The Nevers Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Amazon Podcasts. We're also on YouTube and pretty much anywhere else that has podcasts. If you have any ideas, comments, questions, or interview requests, send them to theneverspodcast@gmail.com. And if you enjoy our podcast and want to support us, consider joining us on Patreon. Benefits include some awesome Nevers Podcast merchandise, entry into giveaways, access to Patreon-only shows, such as Dollhouse Awakens, and so much more. Just search The Nevers Podcast, Patreon. Also, don't forget to rate and review our podcast, as it helps us move up the charts and get seen by more people. Speaking of reviewers, we have another 5-star review, this time from Starjack86 on Stitcher. That's a freaking cool name, yeah. Starjack86. Kind of sounds like a movie, like, oh, did you see the Starjack reboot? I liked it, but I thought Starjack86 was the one that really killed it. Starjack had to say, I'm really looking forward to the Nevers, but it's still so far out from when it'll finally air, so I'm really happy that I have a podcast about the show that I can listen to in the meantime. The hosts are an enjoyable and eclectic group of people with a seemingly vast knowledge of Whedon's work, which makes listening to the podcast that much more enjoyable. Well, thank you very much, Starjack,
thanks, Starjack,
for the review and the kind comments.
Woohoo!
And yeah, we do have a couple of real Whedon encyclopedias on the cast, so always great to tap into that knowledge.
So before we do the news, how are you doing, Tig?
Not bad, yeah, not bad. Yourself?
Not too bad. It's the weekend, you know.
Indeed.
I know it's like nighttime over there. Your windows aren't lit up anymore. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's only 7:15, but it gets dark so quickly these days because winter in England.
So what's going on in the future?
Pretty much the same as going on with you. Yeah, I hate to say it, but it doesn't get any better. Soz. I have Rocky Road bars though, so that's a little plus.
Yo.
I made them earlier. Yeah. There's
not anything going on here except COVID, so.
Yeah, boo. Boo COVID.
All right, we'll do the news. Ella Smith, who plays Desiree Blodgett on The Nevers, has started publicity that has let us know the cast has probably started publicity, but she had an Instagram post that says publicity did and done, and Skelly commented, how was it scary? Also, did you do your hair that way? I don't remember filming any of it. Jamie Hollis, who I guess was part of the PR group, said, I had a lovely chat about the upcoming Joss Whedon series, The Nevers, with one of the cast members today, and she 100% sold me on it. I can't wait for it to come out. So that sounds encouraging.
Yeah. I've got to say, everything I'm hearing from the set and from the cast and from people who've spoken to the cast and crew sounds like this is really going to be I know it's a long wait before it comes out, but it sounds like it is absolutely going to be worth the wait.
I hope it's just amazing. And I'm excited that it was Ella Smith who talked about it, because I'm really fascinated by her character. So yeah.
I have a feeling she's going to be one of those characters that doesn't really appear on many people's favorite, most anticipated characters, but is just going to steal everyone's heart the moment they start watching the show.
I hope so. I hope she's a total smartass too.
I can totally see that, yeah. I mean, from the little we know about her character, I could definitely see a kind of a certain level of cunning.
Right. So world weary, heart of gold, the whole,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Joss writes those kind of characters so well, it would be a shame to have such a perfect opportunity and not take it.
Right.
Speaking of our nerd overlord, it's that time again. It's WhedonCon. And this year, the Nevers podcast is hosting its own panel at what is being dubbed HalloWhedonCon, which just that pun gives me life. We'll be reviewing the cast and some of the familiar faces that make up the crew behind the camera, as well as sharing what little we know about the upcoming show and why we're so excited for it and why we think all of you should be as well. The event kicks off at 11 a.m. I'm not sure what time zone that is. I'm assuming probably Central, on October 24th. And if you wish to come along, which I strongly recommend you do, you can buy your tickets at www.whedoncon.com. I believe a good chunk of the proceeds go to charity, so you can call it your good deed for the day when you buy those tickets.
Yes, and we'll all be in costume, so come see us.
We will.
Juliet Landau, who most notably everyone knows as Drusilla from Buffy and Angel, is premiering her directorial debut, A Place Among the Dead. It's a film. The tagline is, in this revealing and terrifying meld of fact, fiction, and the fantastical, actress-filmmaker Jules, driven by the many demons of her past, embarks on a journey at the potential cost of everything she knows and loves. It is co-written by Landau and her husband, Devril Weeks. The film delves into true crime, the reality of when people take fantasy and vampirism too far. It chronicles the fun, imaginative, creative side, and alternatively, the dark and disturbing side. It will be distributed by Modern Films, a London-based female-led production and distribution and event cinema company working with rising and established talent from around the world and bringing innovative stories to a global audience. They focus on creating connections between content, context, and curation with a particular emphasis on pressing social issues of our time through the power of cinema. And cultural expression. So now she's got a really interesting set of cameos here, which when I saw the trailer, I was super impressed by. Joss, of course, is doing a cameo, but we would expect nothing less for him to support his previous cast members. Gary Oldman. Ooh. So that's pretty impressive.
Dracula.
Right. Ron Perlman. And we all know him from Hellboy, among other things. Robert Patrick, the Liquid Terminator. Lance Henriksen, who is an amazing character actor, and Anne Rice.
Wow.
Who wrote the Vampire Chronicles. Lestat and Lewis and, all those. Appearing for the first time in a film for her.
That's a huge scoop.
Yeah. Also in the works is the Undead series. All the artists who appear in A Place Among the Dead return to participate, as did Tim Burton, Willem Dafoe, and many others. So we are trying to get her on so we can talk to her about A Place Among the Dead. So stay tuned. More info at modernfilms.com, A Place Among the Dead. So she's been doing a viral campaign for this film that we've been following on Twitter about, have you seen this man? And I watched the trailer. I don't know if you did or not.
I did. I'm
so
excited for this.
Yes, it looks like kind of a mesh between a documentary and a found footage sort of deal. So I saw Robert Patrick in it, and it looked pretty impressive. So I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I watched the trailer, and I didn't really know what to think. It looks so bizarre and so intriguing. Like if I hadn't already known, if I hadn't seen the trailer on Juliet Landau's social media, I would immediately have known that it was her. It's like it captures that kind of very bizarre feel, and the whole kind of viral campaign to promote it with "Have you seen this man?" was very unsettling.
Well, if you look in the trailer, she's looking for this one guy who I guess is like king of the vampires, and she's going around talking to people about, fictional vampires versus people that practice or identify with vampires in real life. And what I think happens is she kind of looking around, goes too far and gets sucked into this really alternative dark side of it that nobody really knows about. So that's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I love the idea of kind of blending documentary, but then putting in a lot of kind of fantastical, fictional elements to kind of just leave you all not quite sure what you're watching. It's going to be quite the event. I'm very excited to see it.
Because, like, found footage, you're just asked to believe that it's all real, right? And this is not found footage. She's still present, but you're asked to believe that this is a real search for knowledge. So, yeah. So good luck to Juliet. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I really hope, just like, even though I knew nothing else about it, just for her, I hope it does really well, because it seems like a real passion project, and it's quite glad to see it's finally seeing, well, probably not the light of day, maybe it's finally seeing the dark of the moon.
Also, does she age? I mean, how long ago was Buffy? She looks amazing.
Her and Kendra are actual vampires. That's the only explanation.
She was a very serious ballet dancer, I believe, and the women that I know that have been dancers, they just don't age.
So, moving on to our discussion, as of September 7th, filming has officially resumed on The Nevers. So, the question then becomes, how far through the filming are they? How long do you think it will take them to finish? And where exactly will they be filming? We have spoken to an unnamed source who has revealed they're filming at Nebworth House and extensively in Brighton by the Sea. I was doing a little research before this, and Nebworth House is like one of the great stately homes of the country, and it's a huge place.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you think that could be the home of Lord Masson, played by Pip Torrens? He's meant to be a peer, so he's going to have quite a fancy place. You think that could be his abode?
Yeah, I took a look at this place, and it's enormous. It's obviously somebody that would be the upper class landed gentry, somebody with a title, so that's very possible.
Definitely. I mean, that's not a normal person's house. That's a peerage there.
That's not where Desiree Blodgett lived.
I don't know. There's a lot of bedrooms in that place. You could fit a whole lot of fun in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would seem most likely. It's not going to be the police officer.
No.
Frank Mundy. It's not going to be the orphanage, because we know the orphanage was shooting in Joyce Grove.
Mm.
I don't think Edmund Haig. So I mean, it just really seems most likely that it's unless it's a residence where they're shooting the Queen. Right? And that's standing in for an interior where he's addressing the Queen. I don't know if we'll see the Queen or not, but it's probably luxury enough that it could stand in for a residence for royalty. So
yeah, I highly doubt we'll see. We've spoken on that subject before, but I can't see them putting Victoria in the first season, except for maybe like a cameo right at the end of the final episode.
Right. Like, I feel like they could go as far as having him stand outside a door and tell him she's waiting for you and he has to go in there. But I don't think they're going to cough up the Queen anytime soon. I am fascinated by Brighton, though, because Brighton has a big role in a lot of... I'm a Jane Austen nut. I'm a Janeite. So Brighton plays a big role in a lot of her books. And it's like a vacation place, right, Tig?
Yep.
In the UK, it's like beaches, Brighton by the Seas,
and the pleasure beach, and there's a huge kind of fun fair type situation. There's a long pier where they have kind of shows and cool things. It's a really fun place to go.
So that interests me at what they're doing in Brighton. Like, if I can't, like, who's at the beach? What are they doing at the beach? If it's a seaside resort, who's there?
Well, I know a few reasons people go to visit Brighton, but I don't think they'll be on the show. And then again, it is HBO. You never know. But there's quite a lot of potential for filming down there, because it is quite a varied area. There's lots of housing and lots of kind of small kind of rural-esque towns, but there's also the huge pleasure beach. So there's lots of a lot of it has kind of period appropriate ironwork, etc., etc. So. Yeah, there's a lot of potential for filming some very fun scenes down there.
Well, I would think if they just needed interiors, they would be on a soundstage, or they would be in London. It would be too expensive to go to Brighton just for interior work. So
yeah, they're definitely down there to shoot on the pier or on the beach or on kind of like skyline type situations.
I'm excited. So, how long do you think it's going to take? From the time that they announced that they wrapped episode 1 to finishing the first 5 before the COVID shutdown, it was like 3 months?
About that, yeah.
So if they've started now, I bet the goal is to finish before the holidays.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm guessing they'll be done around the first or second week of December. Because I'm really hoping they knocked out a lot of the kind of the skeleton of the show, so to speak, in that first chunk of filming. And now it's more about the smaller, more character-focused scenes and a lot of the kind of outside landscape type filming.
The only thing I think, though, is that if they're finishing in November, December, that's not a lot of time for post for a spring release.
Well, I'm still kind of hoping there's not going to be a huge amount of post-production work needed. I'm hoping they go practical for as much as they can.
This episode of the Nevers Podcast is sponsored by Dead Good Tees, aficionados of the sci-fi and horror genre and creators of premium heavyweight t-shirts and hoodies that are built to last. Dead Good Tees ships worldwide, so whether you're braving the Arctic winds of the Yukon or strolling the beaches of beautiful Thailand, Dead Good Tees has you covered. Thank you to Dead Good Tees for supporting quality podcasting. Start shopping today at deadgoodtees.co.uk. And don't forget, you can follow them online at Dead Good Tees.
So, our next topic is one that has been discussed many, many times because it is so true. Why does The Nevers have the potential to be Joss's greatest work to date? I think there's many reasons why, really, but the number one is it's one of his most ambitious ideas. And speaking of Joss, that's really saying something.
Yeah.
And the most important part, it's that perfect combination of a creator on fire and a network that's not going to f*** with him. That
Agreed.
is the thing that Joss has been missing so much in the past.
Agreed.
And he has that now.
100%.
So, yeah, I think just the fact that it has the potential to be Joss's greatest work because it has the potential to be kind of, in essence, the truest Joss work we've ever actually had. Because it'll hopefully have the bare minimum studio interference.
You know, all I can do is agree. I think that this is the opportunity for him to go all in. I think, you know, HBO has the reputation for absolutely not messing with their creators for the most part.
Indeed.
If they, you know, the show didn't even need a pilot. It went straight to series. Yeah. And, you know, I'm just super excited that he has this opportunity. I mean, in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of news about Game of Thrones and how much HBO meddled with their pilot because it needed it. So, I mean, I think it stands to reason that this has come way after Game of Thrones and they didn't screw with it at all. So, I mean, I at least that we know of. So I think, you know, looking at the limited number of set pictures that we've seen and the locations that they're shooting at, that he's got the budget, he's got the faith of the company and the production. His actors have been nothing but complimentary. Now, obviously that's, you know, press, but, you know, I think it could be, you know, it's going to be tough to beat Buffy. I mean, don't get me wrong, because Buffy was so on time. And we're going to talk about themes next, but I think that this absolutely, with his ability to fully execute his vision, is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I don't want to be that guy, but it sort of needs to be said. HBO, they're a huge company. They have almost bottomless pockets. It's good. Like, I know money isn't everything, but generally the people that say that are the ones that, you know, have the money. Knowing that he's got all the backing required and the faith from his company to be as big and grand as he wants. Looking at, you know, Nebworth House and Joyce Grove, these are beautiful sets. Looking at the props we've seen, they're beautifully made. This is clearly going to be a really high quality product. I mean, that's going to get you a certain distance.
Well, I mean, not to be a horse nerd, because I am a horse nerd, but just the four-in-hand carriages, the historical carriages and all the horses and the, you know, dressing up the historic areas of London to shoot some of this stuff, that is not cheap. Yeah. That is not cheap to rent all that stuff. So, you know, you got to have the horses themselves, the animal wranglers, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, they're going for it. I'm super excited.
All in, baby.
So we talked about getting to themes. So the possible themes, good versus evil, obviously, but Joss always has a way of graying that out to where once you get to know some characters, it very much becomes how the world really is. The world is not black and white. The world is grayscale. Redemption is one of his huge, always through all of his work is redemption, change, perseverance, sacrifice. Humanity versus technology may come in on this. Other topics. I think the political situation across the world right now is omnipresent. He tends to be very political. I think he will probably tackle fascism and conservative versus liberal politics. The classism, I'm sure, will come into play because it was as much as it is now, part of our world. It was really present in Victorian England. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he executes those topics. Just a few of them or all of them. The show's supposed to at least run for 5 years. We know from Olivia Williams signing a 5-year contract. So, he's got it arced out, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to think that a 5-year contract equals 5 seasons, but
yeah,
we know
absolutely.
That's not true.
Well, I think it's close.
I was thinking he was, if I was Joss, I'd be planning for a 3-season arc with a potential to extend beyond that for as long as is required. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's planned out at least 3 seasons worth of storyline. Frankly, we've seen what Joss can do with 1 season. If he's got the chance to plan out a full 3-season arc, I'm expecting it to cover just about the entire range of human emotion. I think it's not really a question of what themes do you think he'll cover. It's what themes do you think he won't touch upon within this arc.
Well, and he's also said that the first season is his chance to have multiple pilots, so...
Exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have kind of one arc going through Lord Masson and Pip Torrance's character, Dennis O'Hare's Edmund Haig, then probably Zachary Momo's Horatio Cousins. They're all very much kind of the upper tier of society. They're doctors, peers. They're going to be dealing with kind of rich people problems. Although I imagine, being as he's meant to be one of the few successful West Indian physicians, there's going to be a certain element of kind of how horrifically racist old London peers were.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining that's going to be...
I have a feeling he'll be somewhat of a curiosity because of it.
Looking at characters like Horatio Cousins and Desiree Blodgett and Harriet Kaur, a lot of the characters seem to be very strongly based on family. And I think, I know it's been a recurring theme in a lot of Joss's work, but I think that idea of kind of protecting your family, finding a new family, doing what you need to keep the people you love safe is very much going to be an ever-present issue. Sure. Not just in dealing with classism, with racism, but also in kind of, as you call it, xenophobia. Because we're going to be in a situation where not only is it a very kind of volatile powder keg of an era with, the kind of the empire bringing in people from new countries, the emerging middle class, meaning there's a lot of kind of class division, but then add in that X factor of suddenly people from all across the spectrum are developing these crazy powers. The question then becomes we had 2 peers. We have Horatio Cousins and Edmund Haig. They're both doctors. They're both relatively high class. But then if one of them suddenly develops a power, that's a split right there through the middle. How do you deal when people that were, your peers, your workmates, when suddenly they become something so completely different? How does that affect your day-to-day life? How does that affect your opinion of them? Do you think they've been cursed by the devil? Do you think it's a gift from God? Is it something in the middle?
I have a different viewpoint. I feel like this is very much going to be an upstairs, downstairs sort of thing. And I feel like the crossover will be maybe Lavinia and Lord Masson, because Lavinia's obviously, to have as much money as she does, is going to be very wealthy, maybe titled, and that she's going to be running this orphanage on the side. And then Masson, Lord Masson, is going to have a bunch of people I feel like Edmund Haig and Nicholas Purball, who's Odium, and they're all going to be people unsavory characters he deals with to do his dirty work. I kind of feel that way about them. You have Augie, who is Lavinia's younger brother, so he's going to be kind of the money, younger kid without a care in the world. I don't know where Horatio fits into it. If he knows Lavinia or if it's through Haig being the same doctor. But then you have kind of the doctors who I believe in Victorian era were considered upper middle class, and as well as and then middle class was kind of the police officer, and then all the orphans who are, and Desiree Blodgett, who are clearly lower class. Also, we don't know anything about Amalia or what her class is. No one's really talked about that, and she's the main character, so it's super, annoying that we don't know more about her. So that's, I think you're right. I think that, obviously classism is going to be a huge arc. And the pressure and chaos that the upper class with money can put on lower classes when they're not happy. As present today bears out. Sadly, all too true. Right.
I have a distinct suspicion the kind of the X factor in all of this is going to be Declan Oren, Nick Frost's character, aka the Beggar King. He's charismatic and brutal. He runs the street gangs. He's like a somehow even more messed up Fagin. And I have a distinct suspicion he's going to be the connector between a lot of these fairly disparate elements. We know that he's been working with cousins, so that will probably link him to Amy Manson, her character, the gang leader. So I can see him being kind of the central, him kind of having a big sort of underground bizarre meeting market type place, where he sits in the back, probably drinking, or maybe it's the Victorian era, smoking something, getting a bit of opium in him, while making arrangements and connections between all these people in order to kind of organise the chaos that is his stock in trade.
Right.
One thing you mentioned that is blowing my mind, we know so much about so many of these characters, but we still know absolutely nothing about the main freaking character.
I know.
It's crazy.
We just know that she's kind of a rebel and she drinks too much. One of the things I thought about, though, is because of the promo poster that was at the HBO upfronts last year, and it had a very Mary Poppins look to it, that maybe Amalia's the Mary Poppins of the show that comes in as a governess or something. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I have no idea who she is.
There are a lot of children involved. I know Horatio has a kid. Desiree has a kid. Violet Predajon is quite young, as is Anna Devlin's character, Primrose Chataway, is meant to be 16. Yeah. So it's entirely possible. We're thinking right now that Amalia True is kind of joined the orphanage as an orphan, but could it be she joined the orphanage as a governess and is looking after them? Oh, this is bringing up very interesting new possibilities.
I mean, like Lucy Best, I don't know what her role's going to be, because she can't be an orphan. I mean, once you're in, at least if the historian was right, they tossed you out of an orphanage when you were like 14 or something, when you were able to work. So
I wouldn't be surprised if she was part of the Beggar King's retinue.
That's certainly possible.
The poor, adaptive and streetwise. Kind of a maybe not quite a kind of right-hand man type situation. Kind of a person in the know, so to speak. Do you like what you hear on the Nevers podcast? Care to share your opinion? If you do, then consider leaving a review for the show. Your review helps us to reach new listeners and let us know how we're doing. Go on, it only takes a minute. Will we be getting a new season once a year, or will there be longer breaks between seasons, as we've seen currently in shows like Westworld?
I think it's hard to say right now. I mean, because of COVID, they very well may break it up, because they had the first part of the season. That would assume, though, that they filmed everything in order. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
That's the thing. When this was an HBO show, in kind of heavy air quotes, I assumed it would be following a fairly strict once a year release schedule. But now we know it's moving to a streaming network on HBO Max. One of the great freeing things about being on a network like that is you can kind of just release it when it's ready. You don't need to stick as strictly to a schedule as you do for the TV. I wouldn't be surprised if we got one roughly every 12 months, but I think it leaves a lot of space open where they could kind of maybe release like a one-shot special at Christmas or Doctor Who style, drop one out every 18 months if the show requires a bit of extra work. I think the fact that it's on a streaming network and the fact that the world is in utter chaos right now, it gives them a bit more freedom to work how they need to make sure the product they release is always as good as it has to be.
So far from what I've seen with HBO Max, though, is they're sticking to the HBO sort of stuff. And they're releasing things as seasons. They release once a week. They actually, on new shows, they release 2 or 3 in a row, right? Oh. Right at the beginning so that they can get people interested. So for Lovecraft Country, they released 2 or 3 up front. There's a couple of others that have come after that they have. There was a true crime thing about a murder in England. I can't remember the name of it. It was the Murders at Whitehall Farm. And they released 3 episodes of that up front, and I ate that show up. It was fantastic. So I think they'll stick to the playbook mostly. They may goose it with especially with Joss, because it takes him a minute to get going. So that's my prediction. Will there be big spaces between production? I don't know. Westworld has, they started doing that with Westworld and Game of Thrones, and I don't know what that's about. Production demands or whatever. So it's really hard to say. We're kind of in a transitional point with COVID about how long things are taking. And how long it's taking HBO to put out their premiere series. So we'll just have to see.
It's a tricky situation. Everything's really in the air right now because we can't tell how much is delayed due to them just having it set in a certain way and how much it is delayed due to the collapse of the world.
Not to be over dramatic or anything, but.
Yeah, no, it does make kind of speculating on things like release schedules a little bit trickier than it would have been in a normal year.
We talked about this off air too, that Ty and I are really tired of everything being on every channel. Like, you used to have cable with a bunch of channels. Now you have a bunch of channels with a bunch of shows, and all these channels are different streaming services. And you still have cable, and it's super annoying because the whole reason I dropped cable was so I wouldn't have to pay as much. And now it's, it's completely ridiculous. So let's talk about the cast and where we've seen the cast. This is going to be fun. First off, our mystery lady, Laura Donnelly, the lead of the show. She has been in Outlander, which I've seen her in, Britannia, which I tried to watch. Apologies, Laura. I'll try and go back to it someday. Beowulf, Return of the Shield, and The Fall. I haven't seen The Fall in so long. I don't remember who she was in The Fall. But she's also in Tolkien with Nicholas Hoult, and she's amazing in that as his wife. So that it's the story of J.R.R. Tolkien and as a young man during the war. So she's Irish. She's an Irish actress, and as we said before, we don't know her character at all, really. Who she's going to be in the show. Have you seen her in anything, Tyke?
This is where I have to make a bit of a confession. No, I know literally nothing about Laura Donnelly. I have not seen. I was combing through her IMDb trying to find a single point of context I could latch onto. I'm very sorry, Laura, if you're listening. Outlander kind of piqued my interest because I know it seemed quite a solid concept, and I really love Bear McCreary, who did the OST. But I don't know, I just kind of never quite got around to watching it. And then, she's just been in a lot of things that I sort of wanted to watch but didn't. I think this could actually be okay, though, just because it means I'm
She's
going
coming
into the
to you
show
fresh.
with no
Right.
preconceived notions of kind of who she'll be and how she'll be. We'll very much be starting this journey together from square one instead of having all these kind of ideas of who she should be or could be.
So I've seen her in Outlander, and I have seen her in The Fall. That was the show with Gillian
Anderson, yes.
Anderson from X-Files, and that was a great show. I love that Gillian's become British.
We will happily adopt her. She's amazing. She's your
national treasure now, not ours. But The Fall's a really great detective, cop, hardened profiler versus serial killer series, and it was fantastic. So yeah, I encourage you to really, of all of them, I encourage you to check out Tolkien. I'm going to let you talk about Dennis O'Hare because you're a huge fan.
Thank you. Yeah, next up, we have Dennis O'Hare, who's playing Edmund Haig. He has been in American Horror Story, True Blood, The Comedians, The Good Wife, This Is Us, and Big Little Lies. I know I've told the story a million times, but I'm going to keep telling it because I love it. When I first saw the cast list, I kind of just passed over his name. I didn't really recognize it. But then when I was doing my research for that first cast we did, I realized that he was in True Blood as Russell Edgington, and I just absolutely lost my mind. He is a brilliant, brilliant character. And if he can bring kind of that fire into this role, it's going to be so good. And then I saw him in This Is Us, which is a show I had to stop watching because I was sorely dehydrated from sobbing the entire time. One of the saddest TV shows ever made. It's just constant gut punches. But he was brilliant. He was brilliant in that. So yeah, I am very, very excited to see what Dennis O'Hare is capable of doing with a Joss script and this kind of leeway. It's going to be outstanding.
He's so multi-talented. He's a stage actor. He's a character actor that with a name, which is a funny thing to say, but I really remember him the best from American Horror Story and all the different roles he's taken on for Ryan Murphy. And he's just, he's everyman, but he's, he can be the schmuck, he can be menacing, he can be debonair. He's just really, fantastic. And I'm with you on True Blood. I was like, cause I read the books, and when they said he was going to play Russell Edgington, I was like, can he pull Russell off? And he totally did it.
Yeah. And I mean, judging from everything he told us when we interviewed him a while back, his character sounds like it's going to be one of the real standouts for the show. So,
I can just imagine, like, I can feel him acting. Like, you talk about pictures you can hear. Yeah. I can envision his character as this Haig guy. If I think that, I mean, it's probably going to be totally different, but I have my vision of him acting in that role. It's crazy. Olivia, my girl, Williams. So you talked about how excited you are about Dennis O'Hare. This is the one I'm the most excited about because I love Olivia Williams. Like when she was on Dollhouse, she was just so good. I know her from a ton of period pieces. She was Jane Fairfax on an Emma series from BBC. She's been in a ton of movies. She was in Miss Austen Regrets. And she was Adele DeWitt in Dollhouse. And, when she came into that just razor sharp, I was just like, she was, to me, her and Topher were two of the best parts of that show. And so when she got this role, I was just like, yes! So she was also in The Sixth Sense. She played Bruce Willis's wife that he left behind. And Counterpart. So I have not seen Counterpart. Tide mentioned before we started that it's on Hulu, so I got to go check it out. I thought it was a BBC show, and I was really upset that I couldn't see it, and I haven't seen them advertising it, so my algorithm must be way off. But her and J.K. Simmons are in this show. So I mean, between her and Dennis, before we even get to Nick Frost, right? Like, oh my gosh, this cast is just
powerhouse.
Just insane.
And I don't know why, but it's just hitting me now for some, I think just seeing their names listed next to each other. We're actually going to get a chance to see a scene written by Joss where Olivia Williams and Dennis O'Hare are acting opposite each other.
Oh my lord, I hope so.
That is just going to be a thing of pure perfection.
Yeah, tour de force.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a real set destroyer of a scene.
Right? You can just see people clapping and weeping after it on the crew.
Yeah. Next up is an actress that has a somewhat smaller IMDb than the previous ones, but has been in a couple of real standout performances. It's Rochelle Neal. She's currently killing it in Das Boot. She had a few appearances in episodes. Much like every actor in England, she's appeared briefly in Doctors. And she had a brief cameo in Terminator Dark Fate. I didn't really know this lady. I wasn't particularly familiar with her work, but once I saw that she was going to be in this, I watched a bit of Das Boot, which it's not really my style of show, but she was fantastic in it. So I'm very much looking forward to her performance in this.
I admit I have not seen Rochelle in anything, but she's absolutely stunning for one thing.
I noticed.
And is Das Boot just like Das Boot the movie? It's the German submarine kind of thing? Is Episodes a British comedy?
Yes, it's a really, really funny show.
Okay.
It's
because there's an American spin-off of it that had Joey from Friends on it, but I didn't think it was the same thing that she was on.
It is.
Excellent.
So yeah, from the little I've seen of her, I am expecting very good things in the show. And she's one of the characters from the character descriptions, she's one of the ones I'm particularly looking forward to. She's the firebender. So
I know.
That's always fun.
That's going to be amazing.
Next up, we have one of the actors I was most excited for. My boy, Nick Frost. Hell yes. He was in the absolutely criminally underrated and sorely missed Into the Badlands. He was in The Huntsman Winter War, which I never actually saw. He was in Sick Note, which I really want to see but haven't yet. He's in Slaughterhouse Rules, which I'm going to be watching very soon. And, of course, probably his most famous work with his good friend Simon Pegg, the Cornetto trilogy, aka Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End, which many people see as a kind of spin-off / spiritual successor to one of the greatest sitcoms of the 90s, the stoner masterpiece Spaced, which is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. I absolutely love Nick Frost. I spent most of my teenage years before streaming. I had both seasons of Spaced on DVD and I just watched them on repeat. I loved them so much. He was brilliant in them. And then obviously when the Cornetto trilogy came out, that was just them but with a bigger budget. Brilliant in that. And everyone kind of had this idea of him as sort of the funny sidekick for Simon Pegg. And it was like, hey, he's good in that, great. Then Into the Badlands dropped.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he blew my mind. Not only was he a completely different character, he was an absolute badass. Yeah. Bargy was one of my all-time favourite characters on that show. He carried the second season. And seeing that, because it's very similar, he's quite a similar character in Into the Badlands to what I'm assuming he's playing in The Nevers. So I'm very, very excited to see kind of an extension of Bargy coming into The Nevers, which is just, I hope he gets to throw down as well, because he was pretty good at the fighting.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think people have this image of Nick Frost as the hapless kind of pudgy goof, right? That, and that, I mean, to be fair, the Cornetto trilogy was that. He was that in space.
Yeah, very much so.
But I also watched Into the Badlands, and I thought he was amazing. So when they announced him as the character he's going to be in The Nevers, I was just like, oh my God, he's going to chew up the scenery as Devlin Oren. And I am looking forward to it because I think it's going to be a lot. We talk about this all the time, and I think he's going to be like Badger without being kind of hapless like Badger, without kind of being bigger than, like, he's actually going to be smart and not kind of a bumbler, right? So he's going to be an intellect with this kind of underground thing going. So I'm really excited to see, everybody knows Nick Frost, but I don't know if everybody's going to know this Nick Frost, right? Because obviously Into the Badlands didn't have a big enough audience to keep it going.
I actually, like, while I obviously want him to be, funny, nice, cuddly Nick Frost, I kind of want to see him just playing an unrepentant, just an absolute horrific character. Just because I think it'd be fun for him. They always say playing the bad guys is way more fun than playing a good guy. I just want to see him really, like, completely disappear into the role. Not be like, oh look, there's Nick Frost. I'm like, oh my god, it's the Beggar King. Run and hide. He'll kill us. Right.
But I think, Joss, it's not going to be that easy, right?
Yeah, true.
He's going to be like the closest character I think that came to one of the complexities of Joss's characters was, what's his name on Battlestar Galactica? Gaius Baltar.
Yes.
Because you could hate him and understand and sympathize with him all at the same time. And I think that is Joss's great gift when writing characters, is making them awful and vulnerable all at the same time. Likeable even, like Spike was,
Yeah.
And he was a terrible person until he got his soul, right?
Even a little bit afterwards, to be honest.
Well, he never kind of lost that punk rock thing. That's a big one. Like Nick Frost is like, we talked about Olivia Williams, Dennis O'Hare, and now it's Nick Frost. It's like,
Next up, a character I'm slightly less excited for because, again, I don't really know who he is. James Norton. My friend Ari, who will be listening, she loves this guy.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I to be honest, I didn't really look him up until he was cast in the show, and then I realized I knew him from a bunch of stuff. So
he was in Grantchester, McMafia, The Recent Little Women, War and Peace, Death Comes to Pemberley, and of course Black Mirror, which everyone loves. But yeah, like, I have seen Black Mirror, and I can't remember exactly do you remember which episode of Black Mirror he was in?
No. But I did see him in Death Comes to Pemberley. I saw War and Peace. I saw Little Women, and he was great in that. He was Mr. Brooke in Little Women, who is just kind of the bookish schoolmaster type. And Grantchester, which I watched because of the Nevers, which I thought he was really great in.
He's clearly got a very strong kind of period drama pedigree.
Well, I think that's what you have to do in England, right? I always joke about this is you pay your dues in England by doing Jane Austen. I mean, there are so many actors that are huge in America now, like Damian Lewis and a ton of others that I know from 10 years before they got big here from showing up in all the BBC costume dramas I watch.
Yep.
I think The Nevers is going to be a breakaway for him. He's over the course of the stuff I've seen, he's very much the straight man, if not the cuckold or the put upon guy. Like, and you can see it because he's tall and he's kind of reddish blonde hair, and he's very, if you will, all American looking in a way. So he's always the good guy, kind of the I hate to keep using hapless good guy, right? And I think as Hugo Swan, it's going to be an incredible stretch for him, just like Nick playing against type. This is going to be very against the type he's been cast in for the most part. So, Miss Eleanor Tomlinson and her eyes.
Oh, yes.
She had a long running role on Poldark. I have not seen anything but the first season of Poldark, which means I haven't really seen her really take on the role she goes through with. So I don't want to spoil anybody because, she was also in Death Comes to Pemberley, which I've seen, The White Queen, which I've also seen, and War of the Worlds. Is that the new one? That's the new one, right? That's the new one. I remember them talking about the new one, which I have not seen.
I saw the first 2 seasons of Poldark, and I'll be honest, I literally only watched the second season because of her. I wasn't a huge fan of the show, but I thought she was just captivating. And on the same note, I saw War of the Worlds, which was the most god-awful, wretched thing I've seen in a very long time. Clearly, the scriptwriters are nowhere near as smart as they thought they were. They tried to get really meta with it, and it just didn't work. But even with one of the worst scripts I've ever seen, she shone. There was one scene in thankfully, the very blessedly soon-to-arrive final episode, where it's just her in a room giving a monologue, and she was captivating. I could not look away. She was that brilliant. So I'm very, very, very excited to see what she can do when she's given a script which doesn't stink. So her character is a disappointing career and broken engagement haven't diminished her spirits from her dream of singing on stage. She's going to be great, and she's going to be surprised how. So we don't know her. She clearly is going to have a power. Her name's Mary Brighton. And we have surmised on shows before that the first episode is going to involve the stage. So maybe we'll see her almost immediately. We don't know. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Amy Manson, who is in The White Princess Once Upon a Time. She plays Merida in that, which I watched that show religiously. Atlantis and Doom Annihilation. Amy Manson plays Malady. She's super unstable, and is being tortured by doctors for her power. Is it Egmont Peg torturing her?
I hope not.
And she is part of a gang. Maybe it's part of, Lucy Best and part of Devlin and all that kind of stuff. We don't really know, but I'm super excited about her character because she's gonna be nuts.
Oh right? Yeah, definitely
like nuts.
I saw her in. She was in a show called Being Human years back, which I absolutely loved, and she was brilliant in that. She was also briefly in Torchwood, the Doctor Who spin-off, and nailed it. So I'm very, very excited to see it. I think she will absolutely be just utterly insane, and she's going to be brilliant at that. And yeah, I have a feeling she could almost be kind of a mid-boss kind of antagonist for the first season. Kind of think early Fate with a dash of Drusilla. And I think that's, yeah, exactly. And it's going to be a real joy to watch. So I'm very, very excited for her.
Next we have Anne Skelly. We also know Anne Skelly from being the subject of one of Heather Horton's paintings, which was absolutely beautiful. A couple, I think. She is known for Vikings, Red Rock, and Death and Nightingales. She plays Penance Adair, Amalia's dearest friend, and the first to join her cause. Devout yet heretical, progressive Irish girl. She's the inventor, which I know, Ty, you're excited about.
Yes, I'm very excited for her. She's
the Willow of the show. I'm sure this, Joss takes umbrage to us pinning a character on her.
I'm kind of hoping that he just sees it as a challenge. Like, oh, really? You think that's how she's going to be? Just you wait.
Well, he always ends up surprising us. So, So I've got to be honest. I'm not sure I've seen Anne in anything. I haven't watched Vikings. I haven't watched Red Rock. She's only got about 10 credits. So she was in Little Women, the miniseries, which I haven't seen yet. I have it queued up to watch. So yeah, I'm excited for her character. I identify with who she is. So
I have seen Vikings, but I haven't seen the season she's in. She's not in it until the until the 5th season, and I'm currently halfway through the 4th. I was hoping to have reached her point before we recorded this episode, but real life got in the way, and I haven't been able to watch it yet. But as you said, I'm very excited about her character, And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what she can do in that. And I mean, if she's of a quality with the rest of the people in Vikings, she's going to be amazing, because that show is freaking awesome.
Well, and they've called out her morality, so I think that she's going to be, I don't know how many people are going to have much in this show. If they do, it's very shifting. So we'll see. And maybe the I'm not doing that because it's wrong.
I see what you did there. I think the show is definitely going to need a moral touchstone, which it doesn't appear to have. Sure. So I'm very happy for her to be that point. Next up is Tom Riley, who we've seen in Da Vinci's Demons, Dark Heart, Kill Your Friends, Ill Behaviour, Monroe, and Lost in Austin Wickham. I know Da Vinci's Demons, well, he was playing Da Vinci. It was a real huge show. A lot of people really, really loved that show and were very upset when it was cancelled. So I'm hoping... Oh, he also was in quite possibly the worst ever episode of Doctor Who, which is Robot of Sherwood, where the Doctor lands in Sherwood and meets Robin Hood, played by Tom Riley, who, I've got to say, credit where it's due, it was a terrible episode, but he was brilliant as Robin Hood. So even in the worst case scenario, like even when with a truly epically terrible script, he is able to kind of rise above and be good. So that's a definite tick in his favour. It's also worth noting that in that episode, he kind of bounced back and forth between being kind of a comedic character and a heroic character. So for his character of Augie Bidlow, who I'm really hoping they pronounced Augie and not Orgy, because that's just too easy a joke. He's Lavinia's younger brother, so I can see him, and he's apparently quite connected with Mr. Widejaw's character, Hugo Swan. So it'll be very interesting to see the counterplay between those. I believe there's something of a love triangle forming between those two and Penance, I believe.
I think it's going to be more of a Penance is upright and very moral, and Hugo is not. And he's going to have to balance. And Hugo's pansexual, so, that's going to be interesting. I know Tom Riley from Lost in Austin playing Mr. Wickham. And, he was a great cad. He was the utterly charming, black-hearted, schemer, manipulator. So he was great in that. I also have to admit, I know him because, I'm a huge fan of Lizzie Chaplin, and that's her husband. She's one of my favorite actresses. So when she married him, I was like, who is this guy? So I'm super excited about Tom Riley. I think he's going to be, if he's an ornithologist, sweet, disarming, it's going to be a great character for Tom Riley to play.
Next up, we have Viola Pretajon, who we know from Counterpart as well, and she was recently in The Witcher. So that's actually all she's been in. So there's not much, there's not really a lot to say about Viola Pretajon, because her roles are a flashback in Counterpart, and then she played the fake Ciri for one episode in The Witcher. Right. So, I mean, she was noticeable in The Witcher. That's about all I have to say.
You talk a lot about her character, though. You have theories about her character. Because she's not speaking, she babbles. And so
I've got to say, there's a lot of characters that I'm looking forward to because I like the actor and want to see what they can do with the character. She is the one character where I'm looking forward to the character, and I'm interested to see kind of almost the opposite of the other. I'm more interested in the character than I am with the actor. Right. So I'm very interested to see what she can do, because I think this character does seem like it's going to be quite kind of, she's everyone's favourite weird little mascot, but I have a distinct suspicion that this mascot is going to become a lot more than we assumed. Because, I mean, this is one of our we're always right theories. We had a theory in one of our previous podcasts that she was going to be speaking, she wasn't speaking gobbledygook, she's just speaking something that no one around her can translate, so they assume it's
Right.
gobbledygook. And she then tweeted about studying with her Latin teacher. So that's
Right.
all I'm going to say on that subject.
So speaking of classism, her character, Myrtle Hapslish, is classified as a middle-class girl from a good family. And she starts this, speaking in tongues thing. She can't speak English, anything resembling speech. So she's given to the orphanage. And so that'll be interesting to watch that evolve.
Yeah, there are also there's a few characters with children, and there's a few characters that have powers related to speech or singing. So they are definitely laying some groundwork here for a couple of pretty strong arcs. It'll be very interesting to see what the payoff is for all of these.
Absolutely.
Okay, next up, we have Kiran Sonia Sowar, who you will know from Mogul Mowgli, which is hard to say, Pure, Silent Witness, Brexit, Next of Kin, Black Mirror, and Legends. Because I saw her Black Mirror episode and I really, really like that. She's probably most known in England, if not in the rest of the world, as playing Salma in Murdered by My Father, a really, really brutal drama from 2016 about kind of honor killings and horrible shit going on in England. I was going to say, it must
be an honor killing drama.
Yeah, it's like she was like emotionally ruining it's a TV movie. And yeah, just based on that, I would have hired her to play frickin' anyone. She was really good in that. So I'm very, very much looking forward to what she can do in this. And she was in, kind of to balance out, she was in Black Mirror, as everyone was, where she was good in that too. So yeah, very, very much looking forward to what she can do.
Her bio is Harriet Cower. She is a young Scottish Sikh. Harriet lives with the orphans, but is accepted by both her family and her betrothed. So we don't know why she's there. She's clearly not an orphan. Optimistic without being naive, Harriet is determined to live her life as she planned, despite its increasing weirdness.
Classic.
So maybe she works there. Maybe she's an assistant or house staff to Lavinia. We don't know. It all depends on how great Lavinia's house is. Because besides the orphans, she would have to have a whole staff besides that.
Yeah, so, I think we've very much been assuming that the cast are going to be playing the orphans, but I'm now starting to think we're on absolutely the wrong track here. I have a feeling
I think some of them are.
Well, a few of them are, obviously, because they're all like the kind of the younger cast that will be playing the orphans, but I have a feeling I'm starting to get a real kind of X-Men First Class vibe from this, where a lot of the touch are going to be kind of almost teachers in the orphanage instructing the younger members on how to kind of survive.
Could be.
So, yeah.
Could be that there's a lot of children, but we're just going to focus on some of the ones that are empowered. Could be that they are actually house staff. Who knows? I mean,
a lot
there
to
is
go
no
on.
telling. I feel like we need to do one of those like whenever they show someone's like crazy and paranoid and they do the board with all the connections to everything. We need to put up all the pictures of the actors on something and do a connection board. Like, well, this is her brother, but he also knows this person and blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
On to Pip Torrens. Pip Torrens has a really long rap sheet as an actor, like really long, like there's only a few of his stuff that's listed here. Mogul Mowgli, Pure, Silent Witness, Brexit, Next of Kin, Black Mirror, Legends, Preacher, and Dez. I actually, the first time I think I saw him, that I recognized him was in The Crown as Tommy Lascelles. Or Lascelles. I can't remember how they say it, but he was very much the first gray man to the Queen, which is very much kind of who his character Lord Masson sort of sounds like in the Nevers. And Tommy Lascelles was a real person, and he was the person that got stuff done for the Queen in the early part of her reign. And so it stands to reason that he will very much be somewhat like that, but he obviously sounds darker in the Nevers. He's being set up to be the bad guy. Who knows if he really will be. He was also, I rewatched Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley about a month or so ago and noticed that he was one of the upstairs staff. I was like, there's Lord Mass. So you've probably seen him a lot more than I have, Tig. So
yes, I'm actually currently watching through Preacher, and he plays a recurring character in that, Herr Starr. And I've got to say, hands down, my favorite character in the series. He is utterly, utterly insane. He's like in the same way in the he played kind of the first Grey Man. In this, he very much plays the kind of this strange religious enforcer for this bizarre group called Grail, who are trying to bring about the second coming of the Messiah. It is there's one episode where it's kind of how he rose to his position of power within the organization, and it's one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. He somehow manages to be absolutely terrifying while also being utterly absurd. If he can bring that level of kind of unpredictability and kind of insanity to this character, he's going to be an absolute fan favorite. I'm very, when I first saw the cast list, I didn't really know who he was or what he'd been in. But since then, I've seen him in sort of 2 or 3 things, and he's been really varied in everything he's been in. But the one constant is that he's been brilliant.
Yeah, he was super impressive in The Crown. Like, you know, the Grey Men, especially framed under kind of the history of Princess Diana, the Queen's advisors, have always been really vilified, right? Tommy Lacella's most of all in his dealings with Princess Elizabeth, not Princess Elizabeth, but Princess Margaret, that kind of thing, you know, doing what had to get done to preserve the name of the crown and keep it from, you know, being cheapened or stained or stuff like that. So, there's there's a lot of crossover. If you look at his bio, at his cast list, he's been in War and Peace, which, James Norton was in. He was in Grantchester, which James Norton was in. He was also in Star Wars.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. He has one of the most impressive IMDb pages on this cast. He really has just been in everything and was great in all of it. Yeah,
and he was in Poldark. So, you know, I think that's indicative of British casting as well. Like, everybody knows everybody, but it's you know, I was scrolling through his cast list, and it just wouldn't end. Like 187 credits is one of the longest lists I have ever seen. So good for him. Elizabeth Barrington has appeared in the Tracey Ullman Show, which I loved. That was a riot. Good Omens and Stella. Good Omens I saw. I can't remember what her role was in that, but she plays Lucy Best, who we've talked about, the Streetwise, poor adept. She's probably going to have a Cockney accent.
Very much so, yeah.
There's nothing delicate about Lucy, though she's given up thieving to live with the orphans, so she's living with the orphans as well. Her quick wit and high spirits mask the pain of a tragic past. So maybe she's a caretaker? I don't know. Elizabeth Barrington is on Twitter. I follow her. We all try and follow the actors, but I really love Elizabeth Barrington's politics. She does not give an F.
She really doesn't. It's awesome.
She is fun. It's fun to watch all her retweets. Well, not fun, but I always know what's going on in England because of Elizabeth Barrington. Vanity Fair, Little Boy Blue, Tracey Ullman Show, Camping, which was supposedly pretty funny. They tried to do Camping here in America and it flopped.
And she was in Good Omens. She was one of the High Devils, Lord of the Flies.
Yeah,
Dagon.
Yeah.
I think I've seen Good Omens, I think, 2 or 3 times now. I've seen Elizabeth Barrington in a bunch of things. I did not know that was her. Like, she absolutely disappeared into that. She's clearly a very, very adaptive actress.
Yeah, versatile actress.
But I think it's because she's described as adaptive in her character profile, and that's where it's stuck in my head. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing what she can do with that role. Like, quick wit and high spirits with a tragic past. That just sounds like perfect Whedon material. So
Anna Devlin. Anna Devlin was in 12 Monkeys. The Importance of Being Oscar, which I assume I have not seen, but is probably about Oscar Wilde.
Makes sense.
Hannah, I'm going to assume that's the TV show, not the movie. And The Witches, which is probably the new adaptation with Anne Hathaway.
I believe so.
Yes. So Hannah, the TV series, she plays Gina. I saw the movie. I've not seen the series. 12 Monkeys I have seen, but she was a chorus in that, so I wouldn't have recognized her. I have not seen The Importance of Being Oscar. So the Nevers will really be, unless the Witches I think the Witches may beat that out, is the first place I'll see her. Anna plays Primrose Chataway. 16-year-old wants to be a proper ordinary girl and not take up too much space, except she's 10 feet tall. So I'm really like, this is one of the most unbelievable parts of it, as Josh tends to stay grounded in reality with the characters. So it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with someone that's 10 feet tall.
Indeed. There's definite echoes of, I believe it was season 8 or 9 Buffy, where Dawn became a giant. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how if he kind of incorporates any of that. And where he goes with that.
That's the first place my mind went, was Dawn being gigantic.
Next up, an actor that I know you are quite excited for, and I've got to say he's going to be good. Martyn Ford, who is playing Odium.
Nicholas Purball.
Looking through his IMDb, he's been in a lot of things where he's played people that are freaking massive. And this scary. Dude looks like he's living CGI. He is ripped. And just to make it more fun, they're hinting that he maybe isn't quite what you would expect a human to look like.
Yeah.
I'm very much getting the practical effects, maybe some horns or scales.
I think he was the one that let on that they're making him look bigger than even he is.
Not sure how that's possible, but okay.
Yeah. So his character is Nicholas Purball, a.k.a. Odium, the quintessential henchman. He looks as unpleasant as he smells. The side effect of a rather surprising turn. Will do any kind of work for money.
Interesting.
Poor Martyn Ford. He plays all these, just astoundingly terrifying characters. And if you follow his Twitter, he's such a nice man. Like, he's enormous, but he's got this cute little blonde daughter and a wife, and he's always talking about sports cars and, getting ripped. And he's just like, obviously he's going to be typecast most of the time, but I think the dichotomy is amazing.
It's just a picture, just for everyone out there that wants kind of a rough judge of how big Martyn Ford is. I just found a picture of him standing next to Dave Bautista, who you'll know as Drax, who you'll know as a walking wall of muscle, and Odium has at least 6 inches on him in both directions. He is an actual living giant. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know why, but I can really see Joss doing this, and I really hope he does. I would love Odium to be this massive guy, super scary, but then have a little kitten as his pet, or have something kind of so that you can see that actually he is, he's the quintessential henchman. But he's not he's a bad guy, but he's not a bad guy. Maybe he has plants or something. I want him to have some kind of nice sort of pastime. When he's not smashing in skulls for money, he's tending his allotment or crocheting.
Well, I think that's noble of you, but I think he's going to be the Terminator.
Yeah. I mean, especially if he's like turning into a giant fish or something, he's clearly going to be. He's going to be a monster.
I want to know what that turn is. If he smells terrible, like, oh my gosh, what did Edmund Haig do to him?
Oh God, yeah. I have a distinct suspicion he's going to be like a fish monster, like or a minotaur or something. Like he's going to have turned into some kind of gross monster.
I hope they don't modify him too much. I hope he's still like human looking, but who knows?
Okay, next up we have Zachary Momo, who you may have recognised from Doctor Sleep, Harriet, 7 Seconds, or Americana. He's been in. He took the Doctor's Holby City route to fame. Another English graduate. I'm sorry, I haven't seen much that he's been in, and I'm feeling quite bad. There's a lot of these people, and I'm like, oh, he was in all these good things. Haven't seen any of them though. I feel like I need to up my TV game.
I saw Dr. Sleep when it came on HBO a couple of weeks ago, and he was in it, but I don't really remember it because I had wine. And I actually need to watch Dr. Sleep again.
Yeah.
You know, it was Saturday night. Yeah, but he, I'm excited for his role. Oh, he was in Harriet. He was John Tubman. Wow. Yeah, that movie got a lot of buzz at the American Oscars. I'm not sure about
it did.
England, but yeah, that's a pretty significant role.
But he is definitely one of the characters I'm most excited to see because
yeah.
I think there's going to be some real kind of conflict and drama with him because he's a successful physician, so he's going to be kind of quite landed. He's married with a young kid, so he's got a lot to lose.
Yeah.
But then he starts working with Amalia, discovers his own ability. I'm assuming that means special power, not just he's really good at surgery. And so he's working with the Beggar King. Like,
yeah, so he gets mixed up with all that underground stuff. Ooh.
Is his work with the are we to take from that he's kind of fallen from grace? Is he, or is it just like a little kind of side hustle he's got going on, help like fixing up the various people that get
maybe
hurt.
It's a blackmail sort of thing that we know what you're about and we need your help. You know,
and we do know that Hugo Swan has a secret club with a side trade in blackmail, so that is entirely possible.
So, I'm telling you, we've got to do that board.
We really do. There's so much going on. It's crazy.
Ella Smith, who we talked about at the top of the show, Hoff the Record, Cinderella, Babylon, Frankenstein at the National Theater. I also wanted to mention a movie that she's been critically acclaimed for called Ray and Liz. It's about a dysfunctional couple. She's really got a lot of great reviews for that, which I haven't seen it because I haven't been able to find it on any of my streaming services, but I'm excited to see it. I'm excited for her character. She is another character I identify with, kind of down on your luck. Not so much the prostitute, but not the upper class woman, not the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she's a seer, or at least a truth sayer, that she has the ability to coax the truth out of men and what's on their minds, which, depending on who her clients are, could be extremely dangerous. They come away relieved in more than one sense. Unfortunately, what she heard may get her killed. So, I'm not sure how she works into the whole, scheme that we're talking about. She's obviously going to be more in touch with the downstairs portion of the people on the show, but depending on her clientele, it could be Masson, it could be Haig, it could, who knows? So, Masson would be in a position to tell her something he shouldn't. So it's going to be really interesting to explore her character because we don't know her obvious connections.
Yeah. I have a feeling that she may be kind of the MacGuffin for the series. With considering her power and considering her position, there is every reason to assume she may hear something she's not meant to.
Oh, sure. Cause
some kind of cascading effect of, a horrific apocalypse as it is, that will bring everyone together at the end. But I've got to say, I haven't seen much that Ella Smith was in, but I did see her in Babylon, the TV miniseries, where she was just an absolute wrecking ball. She was a force to be reckoned with. And if you have a minute, go and look at the cast for Babylon. It's one of the most loaded casts, considering it's a show that no one freaking talks about. Like, there is a lot of serious talent in that show, and she was like right up there with the best of them.
Oh wow!
So just based on that performance, I can kind of tell, I can see an angle she could take for that very kind of no nonsense character, and that could be very, very interesting, especially if she does prove to be kind of the MacGuffin, the linchpin that causes the inciting incident, which causes everything to go off.
I'm also wondering if, she knows her power and she gets paid by other people to seduce men and get out of them what they're thinking. I like that angle fascinates me too.
I could very much see a connection between her and Hugo Swan. So Hugo has his club. He sends Desiree out to kind of, to entertain the guests. End of the night, she comes back to him. Says, yeah, all right, that guy, he's diddling his maid. That guy has just killed that maid for diddling him. And then
Absolutely.
he pays her. And
That's
she goes
a really
away.
great insight. I didn't even think about that. And finally, Ben Chaplin, who in the 90s, I was like, oh, Ben Chaplin. He's been in the Thin Red Line, which was a Terrence Malick film, I believe. Mad Dogs, which, if I'm thinking right, it was the motorcycle thing with John Travolta. That's probably why I haven't seen it. Snowden, which is about Edward Snowden, The Legend of Tarzan, and the movies that I know him the best for, Washington Square and The Truth About Cats and Dogs.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what he can do with a kind of long-suffering police chief who's slowly being dragged into this strange world he can't quite comprehend.
Yeah, so Truth About Cats and Dogs was a romantic comedy with Janine Garofalo. Washington Square was based on a literary piece. It was directed by Agnesa Holland, who recently directed James Norton in Mr. Jones. It was a novel by Henry James about a homely heiress that his character romanced in order to get her money, and her father wouldn't let them marry because he knew he was up to. And finally, she took a small buyout from her father so she could marry him. And of course, he turned around and said, well, I don't want to marry you if you don't have any money. He also played Cinderella's father in the new Disney, or not that new, that's 2 or 3 years ago, redo of Cinderella at the live action. So I'm super excited about him. He's a great actor, and he's still working in really important stuff. And I'm super excited to see him play Frank Mundy. I hope that, especially watching, what's the show? Carnival Row. There's a cop in Carnival Row that is played by, who played Legolas? I'm blanking.
Oh, Orlando Bloom.
Yeah. Kind of the world weary, down on his luck, mentally troubled cop. I hope that Frank Mundy is not the standard issue, beat, detective with, problems,
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see. It says, big, gruff, deeply moral. He trusts no one. His reputation for sudden violence. So that's interesting. Is not unwarranted. Frank finds himself caught between the powerful who ignore the laws of the land, aka Lord Masson, and those who ignore the law of physics, aka the Touched. So that's going to be super interesting.
He's definitely a character that I've heard a lot of people talking about how they're very interested in the direction his character is going to go. And I think there's a lot of potential to go in there's a lot of kind of positions he could fill within the cast. Sure. On paper, he seems like the most kind of stereotypical character on the list. So I'm hoping that that's because he's planning to surprise us and not because he ran out of ideas by the time he reached Frank Mundy, sorry.
Yeah. Ben Mundy. So on to the crew members. So first up is Joss. What can we say about Joss? That's why everybody's listening. He's the writer-director of Buffy. He's the writer-director of Firefly. He's the writer-director of Angel, Dollhouse, Dr. Horrible's, what was Dr. Horrible? Sing-along blog. Dollhouse. He was one of the not one of the showrunners, but exec producers for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Avengers.
Yeah. And then you go down the whole Marvel road. He's one of the architects of Marvel, the Avengers 2. I've kind of had a rough go of it lately.
Yeah.
But we're here for his art, right?
Yeah.
His personal life is none of my business.
Indeed.
I'm excited for this show because I know it's him, and I've never reacted to a show as hard as I have his show. Like his shows are amazing, and they touch me and they make me think, and I can watch them over and over and over again and find something new and ruminate on why some characters did what they did. And it's just, I've changed my mind about characters as I go on. So yeah, Joss, what else can you say?
He's nerd royalty, but you have to respect the work he's put out. He's changed the face of television, and not many people Absolutely. Can say that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in. I already know I'm in.
Yeah, same.
Jane Espenson, who also wrote for Buffy, is an exec producer and writer. She also wrote for BSG. I believe she wrote for Caprica as well.
I think so, yeah.
Some of her more recent stuff, Jessica Jones, Once Upon a Time, which I knew, Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, which I really liked and didn't make it very far. Torchwood, yeah. Doug Petrie, who is also moved on to some really great stuff. He jumped from Buffy to True Calling. He's worked on CSI. He worked on one of my favorites that didn't make it very far, which was Pushing Daisies with Lee Pace and Christian Chenoweth. And it was so good. He has worked on American Horror Story. There's another crossover. And then, of course, the masterpiece Daredevil. And from that, The Defenders. And I heard recently that Disney was behind the scenes talking to Charlie Cox about coming back as Daredevil on Disney Network. And I would die if that happened, because so amazing. Charlie Cox is another one that I've seen as in all my British costume dramas. Like he was in Downton Abbey as this obsequious homosexual, Duke.
The Duke of
So
Duke.
when he got Daredevil, I was like, this is going to be interesting. And he's just amazing. So yeah. So I'm super excited about Doug Petrie. I love his work. And Bernadette Caulfield, who we know, I believe, is an exec producer from Game of Thrones.
Yes, she is. She's got a real magic touch. She's she's worked on a lot of very, very good shows. So I'm very excited to see her here.
They did a wrap up on Game of Thrones after it ended. We're not going to talk about how it ended, but talking to all the kind of the cast members and the crew, aside from D&D, about the production process and getting all the last couple of seasons done. And it was great talking to her, seeing her talk about her process and what they had to juggle to get the show done. She's also done Big Love, Game of Thrones, as we mentioned, Carnival, which was one of my favorite shows. She worked on the X-Files. So yeah, we're lucky to have her.
Okay. We also have Duncan Mcgock coming on as producer. Interestingly, his IMDb for work as a producer is basically just Game of Thrones and The Nevers. So he probably just crossed the line straight from Game of Thrones to this show. But one interesting thing that I'm noting, he's worked as a location manager quite a lot.
I was going to say, yeah.
He seems to be more popular as a location manager than he is as a producer. So it'll be interesting to see with that dual insight what he can bring to her. It's always good when you have people doing roles on the show that understand other parts of the show, because it really helps them kind of mesh everything together and make sure that things really work. So that's always fun.
He's also been a production manager. So between the two, he's worked really closely with, the directors and the ADs and stuff like that. So that's, probably what allowed him to move into producing.
Indeed. Next up is Greg Spence, who will also be working as a producer. He also crossed the lines straight from Game of Thrones. So you can see they're really just bringing people straight across. Again, he's worked on a lot of the good parts of Game of Thrones. So I'm very, very excited to see. I mean, for all that you can throw against that show, and there is quite a bit, the problems almost exclusively lay with the acting and the script. Guess which roles from Game of Thrones haven't been brought over to the Nevers? Acting and script. All the parts where Game of Thrones excelled, producing, directing, stunts, costumes, that's all the places where the people have come across to work on the show. They've really kind of taken the cream of the crop and then brought them across to work here. So I think it does seem that they've really taken the absolute best from that show and brought them across to here. So not only does it mean they're bringing their A game, but also we now have a cast and crew who've spent the last 7-8 years working together. The moment they hit the set to start recording episode 1, they're not recording episode 1. They're recording episode 70 or 80. They already know how to work together. They already know where each other is strong and where they need support. So, I mean, it's going to be an episode 1 that has the feel and the polish of like a mid-season. I think that's really going to show when that pilot comes out and just feels like a polished show already. And that's going to be a real plus for them.
I am fine with all the actors and the acting in Game of Thrones. I think ultimately the writing was the problem.
Definitely, yeah.
We're not going to talk about it. It still hurts too much.
It does, yeah. Yeah. So when I said the writing, I meant D&D specifically, because there was some great talent working on that show, just not those two. But yeah, there's a story for another time. This will probably get cut anyway. Next up, we have the cinematographer, who I know a lot of people are interested in, which is Kate Reed. She's done some amazing work. Like, again, just looking at her IMDb, it's beautiful. There's she's on Hannah, which is a show, the Amazon Prime one, which, I really need to get around to watching because that is very good. Marcella, lots of kind of real great English drama. I think one thing we can say about England, we know how to shoot our TV shows. Yeah,
and a woman cinematographer, which you don't see every day. Well, I think it's great.
Indeed. Next up, another absolute, A-star top drawer cinematographer. We have Sheamus Mcgarvey. I know our co-host Gina is a huge fan of his. He was the DOP for Avengers Assemble, which is the everywhere else in the world name for the first Avengers movie. Over here, we just call it Avengers. But yeah, Avengers Assemble, brilliant. The scene, we've mentioned it a million times. Everyone's spoken about it a million times. The scene on the motorway where they were in a ring and the camera was panning around them. One of the greatest shots in cinema. We also worked on 50 Shades of Grey. Awful film.
But it looked good.
Fair point. Once again, it was a terrible film, but he frickin' nailed his role, and that's what counts. So yeah, I mean, it's clear they are bringing in the absolute cream of the crop for this show. And one thing that has me very excited, the stunt director is the awesomely named Rolly Earlham. Great name. He is the stunt coordinator for all the episodes. And if you look at his he's worked on Star Wars, he's worked on Game of Thrones, he's worked on the Bourne films, the Bond films. These are all films, Guardians of the Galaxy. These films all have really slick, really polished action scenes. So it goes to show that not only are we going to be getting action in this series, but it's going to be of the really high quality that we've come to expect from Joss Whedon's work. So, I mean, I'm now expecting huge battles, maybe some naval battles. We're in for some really, really good stuff.
I can't wait.
I can't talk. I'm just overwhelmed by hype right now.
Costume designers, Jane Petrie was the costume designer for 1.1, the pilot that wasn't really a pilot. Jane Petrie comes from a great resume, Black Mirror, The King, which was the movie that had oh God, I'm blanking. What's his name from who's going to be in Timothy Chalamet?
Oh, yes.
Timothy Chalamet playing soon to be crowned king, rebel, blah blah blah. I believe he's supposed to be Henry the Fourth. I want to say I
think
haven't
so,
seen
yeah.
it in a while. Black Mirror, some other stuff. Fish Tank, which I've seen, which was great. 28 Weeks Later.
Great film.
So yeah. So she did the first show, and then Michelle Clapton took over after that. And she's from Game of Thrones.
Yes.
And The Crown, and Masterpiece Classic, The Diary of Anne Frank, Sense and Sensibility, Casanova. I mean, talk about the best of the best. So, for period costuming, cream of the crop. Absolutely excited about seeing both of these women's work. Gemma Jackson, production designer. If I am not wrong, she is also a Game of Thrones refugee.
I believe so, yes.
She is. Game of Thrones, Aladdin, Finding Neverland. Good Lord. So production design is the whole look and feel of the production, right? It's not a small role.
Yep.
It's
new. How
everything is thought through on a cellular level to be period correct, to evoke the kind of themes and meaning they want to evoke. It's a big job, and yeah, she's coming in. It looks like she's done all of the Nevers. Like, she is one of the series crew. John Adams, Finding Neverland, we mentioned. Bridget Jones' Diary. So she's got an impressive cast list as well. And if they're grabbing people from Game of Thrones, it's word of mouth, right?
Yeah.
They're saying, this person I worked with and was fabulous, easy to work with, brilliant, blah, 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 blah. So super excited about that. Christine Blundell, hair and makeup, who, we've heard a couple of interviews with. She works on Kingsman, Finding Neverland, which she probably worked with,
Indeed. There's a lot of crossover here. It's clear that they were like, all right, HBO, okay, we want to make this show. It's going to be our most expensive pilot ever, or whatever it was. Like, they're really throwing every single arrow in their quiver. They're shooting them at this show to make sure it is as slick and as polished as possible from the moment they hit the ground. And it really speaks to kind of how much faith they have in this production. It's going, like, they're bringing in their absolute top draw talent, and they are not wasting a second. And it's going to show when the pilot airs,
sure.
And it's just slick as anything.
Yeah. If you want to talk about the caliber of the movies she's worked on Wonder Woman. She's worked on Paddington. She's worked on King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. So. And Kingsman, obviously, we mentioned before. So, yeah. So, we haven't talked about whether any of these people are award winning. I'm sure they are. I'm sure there's Oscars and Emmys to go around with these folks. So
you would need more than a single shelf to contain all the awards these people have.
Actually, right here on her IMDb, it says she won an Oscar for Topsy Turvy in 2000 for Best Makeup.
Bada bing.
And obviously the production houses Mutant Enemy, Gerarg, and HBO. And we're calling it now, and our producer is calling it anyway, but I tend to agree with him, that a Heather Horton painting or two will make an appearance in an episode. So I'm, pretty sure that'll happen myself. It will be probably interesting to see how they work it in, how Joss works in it.
Indeed. I mean, I know I was on Twitter, she posted a picture. She's in the middle of painting Anna Carby, aka Rochelle Neal. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was, I don't think that's just to kill time. Like, it's a brilliant painting. So I would imagine that's going to show up somewhere.
I don't know. I mean, I believe that she, if there is one, she'll paint period style for it to appear somewhere.
Yeah. That's probably an excellent point there. Didn't really think that one through, did I?
Her stuff is pretty modern looking. Yeah. Her studies are more still life looking, but like her pool pictures and it wouldn't work with the time period.
Okay. We have now covered the cast and crew, and we're moving on to you. Our next step is the listeners' letters. Any questions, comments, anecdotes, ideas, email them to us at theneverspodcast@gmail.com or tweet us at theneverspodcast, which is at TheNevers, PODCST. First up, we have an email from Diana. I'm not sure whether that's Diana, Princess of Wales, or Diana, Wonder Woman, but either way. I follow Eleanor Thompson. I hope you mean on Twitter there and not in person. And it doesn't look like she's back to work yet. Hopefully she's still part of the cast. Thanks, Diana. I'm very much, we've heard nothing about her leaving, so I'm pretty sure she is still on the cast. I wouldn't be surprised if either she'd just knocked out, because when, in our interview with Edmund Haig, friend of the podcast, Dennis O'Hare, he mentioned that they'd knocked out about 5 episodes before they had to shut down for the apocalypse. So it's entirely possible that she had just filmed all the parts she needed to film early on. Because they don't film in sequence. They're not like, alright, today we're filming episode 1. Let's film all of episode 1. They'll go to a location and they'll film all the scenes that are required for that location in order to minimize movement. So it's very possible that they've already filmed her scenes, at least for the parts that are currently being done.
Right. Or her next scenes aren't up yet. Yeah.
So there's no, like, don't worry, there's very, very good chance she is still in the show. It just might be that she's not filming the parts that she's not in the parts that are currently being filmed. So she's taking a break to stay away from the set because they don't want to have, like, there's limits to the amount of people that can be on the set, so that anyone that's not directly involved, they're keeping away for safety's sake, which is probably a good idea.
We also have an email from Sandra. She said, I was reading the character biographies again. What else are we going to do? And something jumped out at me that I'm surprised hasn't to anyone else. No one has mentioned that we've been provided with first and last names for all the characters except for Amy Manson's Malady. Interesting, no? Do you think her last name was deliberately left out because it's going to be a major reveal later on in the show? I do. Thanks and have a good show. Sandra.
Ooh.
I don't know. But that's a great point. I didn't think about that. Malady might be a runaway of somebody very important or somebody very evil, or who knows, or the illegitimate child of somebody like that. It's an excellent point, and I don't know. What do you think, Ty?
I actually would go one step further and say that the reason we're only given the name Malady is because that's not her name, and there's far more to be kind of secretive about. And like the fact that she was committed by her husband and has been kind of locked away, I would absolutely see her husband as being someone important and powerful that was like, oh god, she's gone wild, let's just lock her up and keep her away, to preserve the image of the family. So I think you are absolutely right, Sandra. It may not be like a first season initial reveal, but I'm almost sure that Malady is going to be someone important. The fact that they've stressed committed by her husband, but haven't stated who the husband is or what her family name is, to me says that's because they're keeping it a secret. So yeah,
and her name itself, Malady, is loaded. So
yeah,
that's a great point. All right, let's plug in the podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Amazon Music Podcast, YouTube. We're everywhere. For more Nevers-related content, go to the web at hbothenevers.com, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under HBO The Nevers, and at The Nevers Podcast on Instagram, and at The Nevers Podcast without an A because it wasn't available on Twitter, which means maybe The Nevers Podcast was going to happen to somebody else. Who knows? Comments or questions, theneverspodcast@gmail.com, and our Patreon at patreon.com /The Nevers Podcast.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Heather. As always, it's a pleasure working with you. Would you like to share your social medias with the world?
Social medias, of course I would. I am HMB at TNP on Twitter. Thanks for putting up with me.
Always a pleasure. And I have been Tig, and you can find me at Tig at TNP. That's TAHEGAT TNP. And until next time, this has been the Nevers Podcast. I was going to make a very poor joke there, but I'll leave it. Not about in England we know how to shoot our dramas. In America, you know how to shoot each other.
Ouch!
Sorry. Oh, did you get shot? No, sorry. Bad joke. Yeah.
This episode of the Nevers Podcast was written, researched, produced, and edited by Matthew Yamanashi. The intro and outro music was produced by Guilherme Moraes. We are more than just a podcast. We're a fan community. You can keep up to date on the Nevers and chat with other fans by visiting hbothenevers.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search HBO The Nevers, all one word, and click that follow button. The Nevers Podcast is not endorsed by Mutant Enemy, Warner Media Entertainment, or any of its subsidiaries, including Home Box Office, HBO, and is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. The Nevers and all names, pictures, and audio clips are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective copyright holders. They're coming. Are you ready?
Would you like to share your social medias with the world?
Social medias, of course I would. I am HMB at TMP on Twitter. That's HMB. Wait. This is why I never did well in spelling bees.